Hello, I'm Emerald Grace, and welcome to the Activate Community CIC podcast. We are Activate Auditory Connections, and today I'm here with Silvan. This is where you jump in. Hello, Silvan.
Hi there. Lovely being here. And thanks for inviting me, Emerald.
That is no
Um,
problem at all. It's lovely to have you. Tell me about yourself, Silvan.
I'm Silvan. I currently work for LinkedIn as a senior account director, which is just a fancy name for a senior sales rep. And I work with largely German speaking, so DACH clients, because of the fact that I am originally from Germany. And I currently live in Dublin since 2019. Before that, been around a bit, lived in Switzerland, the UK, France, and during that time, I worked as a translator, then business consultant, had a very brief stint in investment banking, and then ended up at LinkedIn. And yeah, during those 3 years, really, I found out that I had ADHD and I was autistic.
Well, you sound like an India about the world, a very, very busy India indeed. That is quite an ADHD thing, I believe. Do you separate your traits at all? Do you say, "Oh, that's an ADHD thing, that's an autism thing," or do you just look at it as an ODHD thing or an ND thing?
I suppose it's a bit of both. So maybe regarding the ADHD and me being autistic, so there are two components to it. So I got the ADHD diagnosis, don't like the word, when I was 30. So in end of 2018, early 2019. And I only discovered that I was autistic last year in summer. So yes, I do sometimes separate them because after all, they're so contradictory sometimes. But I also try to not do that too much. I mean, it's that separation between, I guess, some of my shortcomings with of my ADHD, such as my spatial memory, which is atrocious. I can counterbalance with my visual memory and my like with my strong visual memory, and then just retrace my steps to find my house key, for instance. So it's a bit of both, really.
No.
I try
I
to
can really picture
see.
you picturing. I can picture you sat at your desk with some Disney symbolism around you, your favorite cartoons maybe. Visual thinkers often enjoy a cartoon. Do you prompt yourself with any scripts, any
I
cartoons?
Not really cartoons so much, but you are right in the fact that when I work from home, at least, I do have little bits and pieces around my desk. So in my case, it's mainly, for instance, this, like, so it's little spheres. This one's Larimer. I have a couple others. They're, for once, my stimming tool. For others, just very calming to look at. And the other thing that I usually, which is not on my desk right now because I already put it away, is a little Buddha statue that I got from my mom, which is originally from Thailand. Because I've been meditating for over 17 years. So for me, it's really like that's what calms me down.
Well,
Is
I'm really glad
Yeah,
that you've got a way of calming yourself down. And Sylvain, you mentioned that you
sometimes.
don't like to use the word diagnosis. This is a really hot topic within the neurodiversity movement, within the neurodiversity paradigm. What word would you like? What would you like me to say for you now? So when I talk to you, when I talk to Sylvain, never mind the neurodiversity movement, never mind the ND paradigm, never mind LinkedIn work. When I talk to Sylvain, how do you want me to describe your ND experience other than diagnosis? From there,
Um,
go on.
I usually only use the word having ADHD being autistic because that just allows me to not having to engage with the super hard topic.
That's your meditation experience then, your
It
beingness. You want
is,
me to describe your being ADHD and autistic. Do you combine them at all
but
into ODHD, or do you want me to describe your
um,
being ADHD and autistic?
I still choose the both, do the both,
Both.
but it's more because I'm making fun of it with, well, not fun of it. I'm trying to, sorry, fun is the wrong word. I'm trying to provoke because on my LinkedIn profile, for instance, It says hashtag adaptive artist. Um, and it has stirred quite some conversations because I try to break that stigma that oftentimes autistics are prone, say, they're only very prone to routines and they have a hard time with change and adaptation and adapting to new circumstances. And
Can.
that's not the picture that I got from.
Absolutely. We're talking about change, talking about pictures. The thing that has just occurred to me now, I've noticed this game of snap between our backgrounds. We have very plain, very grey, beige, calming backgrounds. And one of the things that I really wanted to start doing, I have been doing in my solo podcasts, was
Mhm.
doing visual descriptions. So, this is a podcast that's going to be released with the image. I would like there to be a more visual viewing for visually impaired viewers, visually impaired listeners, visually impaired experiences. So I'm going to start it off. I don't know if you want to join me, but I'm going to describe myself for anybody who's closing their eyes as they listen. So I'm Emerald Grace. I've got gold frames and a headset. I've got a gold watch, mousy brown hair with natural highlights that sometimes catch in the light, and a navy jumper with pink around the neck. It's an electric pink to wake me up. And my name is printed on the right side of, or is it the left side? It's the left side. And that's what I look like today against my grey, beige background. Who's joining
So
me?
I'll describe myself as well. So I am a 30-year-old gray Caucasian male with blue gray eyes and I'd say short, um, dark blonde hair. And I'm wearing a blue colored polo shirt and a silver necklace and ring. Um, and I'm sitting against a grayish white wall.
It's a fabulous deep blue, your polo shirt. And I'm glad that we got to try those audio descriptions together. So, do you want to talk a little bit more about your experience of working at LinkedIn?
Sure. So LinkedIn is my first multinational that I worked for. So it's the first large corporate that I worked for. So I'd say the most interesting bit, and that's also why I'm part of my like deeply rooted wish for activism, is how I got to LinkedIn. So don't get me wrong that I've never tried to work to land a job in a large company over my 20s, but as you can imagine, it's not easy, especially not for an ND, because you have to adhere to a lot of standards, follow interview protocols, which aren't really made for us most of the times. And so a funny fact that the story that I love to tell about LinkedIn is I did the interview, two over the phone, one on site, and there was a sort of like a business case that we had to do when we did that. And I didn't like what I did. So I redid the whole thing the night before the interview because I flew into Dublin the night before. And then because of my visual memory, I completely memorized the whole thing. Mind you, I didn't know that I was autistic back then. And then we went to the interview, did the whole thing, and then because I remembered everything, I actually forgot to press, because it was a PowerPoint, to press on the slides so they would continue. So I would just keep talking, and they wouldn't see the bullet points. Long story short, they told me that I was one of the best prepared candidates they ever had. Nowadays, I can laugh about it because I say, "Yep, well, I prepped with three different people over 2 weeks, and I memorized every single answer to every single question that I could possibly imagine." And that's how I went in the interview, because I knew if I was not doing that, I would have said something that I shouldn't have said during the interview and probably not have gotten
I'm
the
giving
job.
you a big smile right now because that is exactly the kind of thing that I would try to do. It's exactly the kind of thing that I would try to do. Unfortunately, I would probably end up largely winging it. So it's really interesting to hear somebody else doing very much the same thing. When it comes to interview protocols, you mentioned that you're bilingual, multilingual.
Multilingual. So my native language slash mother tongue is German. I've been speaking English since I was, I can't even tell, like for over 20 years for sure.
Wow, for 20
As
years.
is goes my French and my Spanish. So I'm fluent or near native level with all four of them. And then I'm pretty fluent, albeit a bit rusty nowadays, in Brazilian Portuguese.
And Sylvan, is
I
there anything that I can do to make it easier for you to communicate with me today?
I'm actually perfectly happy because for me it's a clear and a clear voice, and the right tempo is all I need really. And you have a very soothing voice, I must say. So
Thank you
it's
very much. It's nice to hear. One of my ND traits, one of my NDisms is that lots of different accents come out of me, and I don't
uh,
always love the loss of control of my voice. So I try to
you,
speak calmly to maintain some sense of control.
can I tell you a funny story about
I
the
would love
accents?
it. Go on.
Because I'm not a native English, and I've been bumping around when I was younger quite a bit. I also have different English accents, including whatever I am having as an accent now. I can't control them either. But what funny enough, what happens? So, say I go to fly into London and be there for a couple of hours, my accent will assimilate to the British. And the same goes for the US or anywhere else. Or I go out with South African friends and just talk to them for a couple of hours. My English accent will steer towards theirs.
So, are you a
Funny.
British accent impersonator? English? Is it London? What's when you say British? Where does your accent
Mhm.
take you? Where do you go?
Most likely London, something close to the London accent
London.
because that's where I lived when I in 2010. I'd say so. That's the closest, but it's not really London accent. It's like my accent mixed with London slash British
Well, Savannah, I
English.
think you're a good match for me. I've got a Welsh accent, which is very musical, with this London gruffness, this London twang in there. So I'm sure we'll get the chance to play some accent charades at some point. Do you want to talk a little bit about your journey to LinkedIn? You've talked about how interview protocols aren't always the most accessible. There can be a lot of hurdles for us to jump over. Maybe it'll be easier for you to talk about that with companies that you're not quite so involved in anymore.
It's really what happens nowadays is, well, because before I was a freelancer, so I never had the issue for the same reason as a lot of indies do. They work as a freelancer because they can't find a full time employment, and that's basically what happened to me as well. Um, and then for the investment bank, it was tough. I ended up somehow managing. I can't really tell you why. What I can say about the interview protocols is that nowadays, companies, even large companies such as mine, they are very accommodating, or trying to be very accommodating when it comes to diverse candidates. Um, it's still, I'd say, for a lot of companies in the baby shoes. It's still in the making, in the sense of um, companies are now looking to hire more for skills, but the interview process oftentimes still are very competency based. So it's oftentimes I feel the mismatch between what companies aim for and what they end up doing, because it's new and they oftentimes don't engage as much with individuals or specialist consultancies as they should, because it is very individual to adjust interviews. Um,
Sylvan,
but what I
when it comes
sorry, yeah.
to an interview,
Mhm.
when it comes to a company, knowing how to prepare for an interview, you talked a little bit about consultancy. What makes a good
Yeah.
consultant? What should a company be looking for in their DEI consultant, in their neuro inclusion consultant?
I feel one of the most important things, lived experience.
Lived experience.
Lived experience that has been worked through. So a lot of indies that I've met, including myself, we had our smaller little workplace traumas when during our time until we found our place. Um, and that, of course, transforms you as a person. So if you end up working in DEI because you want to change, that makes things better for the generation after you, for the indies that come after you. You need to be able to have worked through that trauma first and understood how it affected you in order to make it better for others. Because sometimes I see um, activists moving into positions too soon, and they're still not.
You
How
can
do I
take
say
your
this?
time. You can take your time.
There, yeah, it's like being, because it's tough work, and you will listen to a lot of other stories. So you need to be able to stand your ground and not, um, like say, mix and match yours with their experience, rather than being that objective, strong voice that says, okay, this is what happened to me. I know how it affected me. I'll listen to others, how it affected them, and then we look for a solution. But from a very objective standpoint.
Absolutely. Because we've got those global solutions. We've got those global solutions that once they're known, the listening is more about healing. When the solution is known, the listening is much more about healing. It's not about the outcome. It's about the people who are delivering. And then we've got
Yeah.
the solutions that we don't know. And when we are covering new ground, we have to do so sensitively. We have to do so inclusively because it really, really does tend to be those NDers and those people with experience of marginalization that are on the edge, that are at that vantage point, that visual vantage point to be able to see what's needed.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you want to
It's
see?
that really.
What do you want to see, Sylvan?
What do I want to see? I want to see an equitable future where nothing needs to be accommodated or adjusted, because the processes work in a way that they work for everyone. That is my utopian vision of the future.
This sounds like a
Um,
dynamic utopia. Absolutely
it is,
dynamic utopia.
but I feel it would be a beautiful utopia as well. And then D movement has gained a lot of traction, if for lack of a better word, over the past year, 2 years. So it's what I say. It is loud enough, or it's getting loud enough, so that it can't be ignored anymore. And that's something that makes me very confident. I mean, I'm only really part of the indie movement myself since, say, about a year.
Yeah.
Um, but it's also that, having understood that a lot of indies like me, like late diagnosed, is we finally feel like, oh, we're fitting in, we are part of a group, and we feel like we're part of a group because
Yes,
they're like
Sylvan.
minded.
What does it mean to be part of a group? Tell me what it means. What does it mean to you?
What does it mean to me? Having a sense of belonging in first and foremost, and then what follows is sort of psychological safety and easiness to communicate. Um, Normalizing one's own experiences and trauma by listening to others
Yeah.
and seeing, oh yeah, this has happened to me, but I'm not the only one.
And
And there are people that have had much worse experience than oneself, maybe even, and just see, okay, it's bad, but it wasn't that bad after all, if I see what other people have been through. And then that common um, that commonality is like having that common goal, that common vision of achieving. something, which is in the case of D&D and disability movement, being included and being part of the society and be that driving change that is so desperately needed,
Absolutely.
especially.
You want to be able to communicate with people in a way that feels comfortable, in a way that means you can reveal enough of the things that you need to reveal to be understood. And you can see in others what you need to see to understand. But you can still have those boundaries because people will have had different experiences and there are going to be unknowns. So to you, belonging is about sharing in a way that promotes learning.
Yeah, learning and um, it's learning, it's growth, and it's just I feel just also the sense of safety.
I think our connection might have cut out there, Sylvan. I don't know quite what happened, but it's okay. I'm going to give you a moment to rejoin us. I'm going to allow the record of the books to keep recording.